Hello, everyone, and welcome to Makai-World Reviews. This is episode number 66 of this illustrious part of my channel. I am, of course, the Totem Makai, a master of minds and men, also known as Demon Peaks on Instagram. Last month we did a theme month, one for Mr. Takashi Miike. This month I'm going to do something similar, but with Lovecraft-inspired films, or Lovecraft-adjacent films, as I'm calling it. And I took some time to find ones that were not your usual Lovecraft fare, your The Things, In the Mouth of Madness, Reanimator, etc. Tried to find ones that were slightly out of the norm, so today I'll be looking at what I think is probably the most popular of these movies this month, in The Void. So let's go ahead and get to it. But of course, before we begin, please hit that red subscribe button. I'm really trying to show this channel, get it off the ground, rocket it to the moon. And I know damn well you're not doing anything else with your time. So, pull your weight, you freeloaders, and hit that button. Thank you. The Void, directed by Steve Kostanski and Jeremy Gillespie, collectively known as Astron 6, which is a sort of consortium of directors and whatnot, known for their sort of homage, pistache to various horror genres, most of which I've really enjoyed. Manborg, Father's Day, this, of course, Psycho Gorman. I really like Psycho Gorman. It was the Power Rangers movie we all wanted. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with these guys. They have lots of potential, and I hope they continue to do more of this 80s and 90s inspired sort of nonsense. Written by the same guys, same team, perfectly acceptable. Starring Aaron Poole. I don't know who he is. I've seen things he was in, but I can't recall him in a single damn thing. Just he's totally forgettable to me. I don't even remember him in this, and he's the main character. Yeah, I'm sorry, Aaron. I've seen you act, but I can't recall you acting. And Mr. Kenneth Walsh. If you don't know, I run a Twin Peaks meme page. Once again, it's Demon Peaks on Instagram. So I'm more than familiar with this young man. He was Wyndham Earle in Twin Peaks in the sad second season, but the list of things he's been in is staggering. I personally recall him as Dr. John Watson in a series of TV movies about Sherlock Holmes, where Matt Frewer of Lawnmower Man 2 fame was Sherlock himself, as well as your standard X-Files, Stargate, Law & Order, etc. normal TV stuff. Release date for this was April 7th, 2017. What came out the same week? 1 Mile to You, about a guy whose girlfriend dies, so he becomes addicted to the runner's high to connect with her. Probably have just done some heroin. Inexplicably has Tim Roth in it. I don't know how. And The Ticket, about a guy who was blind, stops being blind, and realizes he's a piece of shit. Inexplicably, this one has Oliver Platt in it. Whatever. To the plot of The Void. So we have, as you're going to hear me say, formulaic. I'm going to say it a lot in this review a lot. So tuck in. We have a pretty formulaic bottle horror movie with some interesting things layered in there. Due to some bloody shenanigans, a criminal ends up with a state trooper at a hospital that has seen better days. And from the get-go, there was a mysterious hooded cult that has taken residence outside of the hospital, preventing the few inside from leaving. We then meet most of the cliche people here: old guy, pregnant girl, strong nurse, weak nurse, other cop who will be killed, redneck guys, and nice doctor who will be revealed to be evil. All your standard sort of hospital horror kind of people you usually meet in this situation. An ancillary nurse is turned into an eldritch horror, and the nice doctor is seemingly killed, turning everything into a madhouse as the cult looms closer. Of course, the nice doctor is revealed to be the evil mad scientist, hell-bent on bringing his daughter back from the dead. The pregnant girl begins to have issues, and the good nurse and the state trooper's ex-wife, the same person, goes in on her own to get medicine and is kidnapped. Leads to the trooper, the redneck guys, and the criminal to head down into the labyrinthian basement of the hospital, where they headlong into a nightmare ending full of undead horrors and the doctor who is opening a gate to another dimension. Many of the survivors are killed, including older redneck guy and old guy. The officer's wife is killed after being transformed into a monstrosity, and the pregnant girl is killed, giving birth to the doctor's unholy spawn. Finally, officer tackles the doctor into the literal void, and the doctor is killed. Weak nurse and young redneck guy escape the horrors, but the officer and his now-alive wife hold hands and look upon a towering black pyramid beneath an alien sky. Alright, so this one is pretty straightforward. I feel comfortable with the general pros and cons list. Pros. Visual effects are overall really well done for a low budget film like this. The practical effects are more enjoyable. While the CGI has some really big issues, the green screen is sloppy at best. But the practical stuff, the atmosphere, the monsters, the nurse monster, and the baby monster look very similar, but are both cool skull, eldritch tentacle creatures. And the experiments, the rooms of people who can't die, and the various ways they can't die. Well, some of them, the makeup was sloppy. Overall, it was intensely enjoyable. I'd rather see that with the sloppiness and let my suspension of disbelief take over than see jarring CGI scenes like a lot of movies do. I was genuinely happy with most of the effects. Well, nothing staggering. They did a lot with what they had. You'll probably see this one on the cons list as well. But the formulaic stuff, the movie is highly formulaic. As I've said this a billion times already. It's highly troopy and cliche. But that's not a bad thing necessarily. There's a reason that there's tropes and cliches. There's a reason that they exist, and when they work here, they work. The people they had was appropriate. The path they took was appropriate. The reasoning, everything did what they did, made sense, helped move the plot along. There isn't a lot of downtime in the movie. They move from beat to beat to beat, and while there's no real surprises, I was pleasantly surprised that at no moment I was bored. I really found myself hating or eye-rolling at any of these mostly forgettable characters. The sets, and by that I mean the hospital, was actually pretty well done. We forget the scope of hospital sometimes, the size of the magnitude. And this one had some good atmospheric set pieces while keeping that low budget feel. But I think they used the space well and kept a good claustrophobic atmosphere without breaking the bank with lots of sets. Some of it seems reused, but only if you're really paying attention. I loved the ending, the ambiguity and the scope of it. Well, I said the CGI, particularly here, was really meh. The concept was really strong, even if a little nonsensical. But I love the survivors here. The nurse and the redneck guy are in the hospital, seemingly going to be okay, maybe. There's still cult members outside, maybe. But the cop and the wife are in the new world, full of potentially unbound horrors. Really cool way to cap things off, and a strong ending to a movie kind of really desperately needed to have that ending. And Kenneth Walsh, when he was actually acting as the good doctor, was really poor, but I think that was intentional. As after his perceived death, he became much more interesting. He was mostly just voiceover work, and this is where he really shined. If you've seen him in anything, namely Twin Peaks, you know he can have a very menacing voice, and he used it here to full effect, giving us pretty much all the exposition in an arch and not at all boring way. I was happy to listen to him talk for as long as he wanted, and it helped get everywhere to everyone to where they needed to go to. You know what I mean? We don't see him again in the film. He is replaced by a different actor with his voice for when he transforms near the end, which is neither here nor there. Now for the cons. Now, while Mr. Walsh was a good thing, everyone else was, well, not. Not that anyone was in particularly bad. The old guy who's with the pregnant girl was fairly awful. They were all totally and completely forgettable in every conceivable way. I didn't use anyone's name for that reason. It's totally not important. And the main character, I mentioned Aaron Poole being forgettable in the beginning, and he's the main character, and I still don't really remember him in the movie. I said that I liked the movie lean into its tropes, and in a good many ways I did, but not as far as the characters go. I didn't mind them. I think they all fit in. They could have literally been any actors doing any of these scenes, essentially. Not to disparage any of them as actors, but the narrative was driven around them more than with them. This is a minor gripe, but I kind of would have liked more out of the plot. Not the action or anything. That was mostly fairly good. I would have liked more Lovecraftian references. There was less than vague hints, and a notebook that had some vague this or that, but I would have liked the reason how the doctor was able to accomplish all this weird stuff. After his daughter died, he traveled and found some kind of Necronomicon type book or something. And like I said, this is minor, but just something I felt could have fleshed out a good bit of the stuff, especially the doctor. It made a slightly better movie. Strange one is the lack of humor. Now you might think, why would this need humor? Well, this is kind of Astron 6's specialty. Every movie they've done has this kind of dark humor, at least every one I've seen, and that I think this movie could have sorely used. Just to see little moments that add something to the texture and overall memorability of this film, which outside of the premise and ending isn't a terribly memorable film. Now the soundtrack. This unfortunately heads into the negative territory. It's a hyper generic horror soundtrack, big booms, brooding melodies. Nothing I've not heard a billion times, and I think this movie could have used something a little bit different, something that made the formulaic stuff a little bit more special. Overall, I liked this movie. It was a breezy watch, wasn't overly long, and nothing dragged, but it wasn't particularly good, nor particularly Lovecraftian outside of some vague hints and some visuals. It was, as I've said many times today, formulaic, and that's both to its merit and detriment. So yeah, it's not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination, but if you've seen a horror film since 1984, you've seen this movie. Outside of the kind of cool ending, so you already have a predilection to this type of film, you'll like this. If not, you'll feel indifferent to it, and that's kind of just how it is. Well, that was The Void, and the first movie in the vaguely Lovecraftian movie month. What did you think of my review? Did you watch this movie? Do you like or dislike something about it that I've missed? Let me know down below. So please like, comment, subscribe. Get to my Patreon and let me know what kind of movies you want me to review. Also, please check out my Instagram for daily Twin Peaks memes. That's Demon Peaks. And my podcast, The Dark Peaks Podcast, on YouTube and various other podcast platforms. Though, honestly, go ahead and stick to YouTube because I want to get monetized on that. Next week, keeping up with the aforementioned theme, we look at the movie. This one is The Endless. This has been the Tona Makai, Master of Mind, Ends of Men. Thank you and goodbye.